I started my own practice in London, my own studio. Opened Studio 5 about 17 years ago now, something like that. So, yeah, that's
Okay,
about
so
it in a nutshell. And I studied in Tokyo as well, and various other places, learning Southeast Asian bookbinding and French style bookbinding and or Belgique style or whatever. So yeah, it's a bit of an eclectic education, but it was a rounded, sort of structured education. And again, my teachers were excellent.
so the entry point was through the exit to the book exhibition in Paris.
Basically, yes. And I think I've been going against everything since then. I've been going the wrong way since then.
That's perfect, I guess.
And speaking of bookbinder versus book artist, your works strike me as art first, bookbinding second. How do you define yourself?
You've done the job for me. Because my first discipline was in arts, I went to art college and I graduated. And that was back in the day where if you did go to university, you were one of a handful of people that did go to university. I left art college and was working straight away. And I was working for large companies and all sorts of things. So my background is more arts. But my father was a master tailor, master cutter. So I was very used to working and seeing things happen with different materials. So for me, the book seemed eventually a logical progression of where I could combine all these skills. But I do look at it first from the art perspective, because we see the book first. And, you know, you've got to, for me, the book is a beautiful vehicle that is used by other artists, poets, writers, illustrators, other artisans as well, paper makers, you know, type founders, type designers, you know, the people that make the ink, all these other things, and it all gels together in this one form, which is the book, which is a universal vehicle. You know, there are very few people on the planet that don't know what a book is. All right, it comes in various different styles, different genres and that sort of thing, but it is a very universal language. We may not understand the language in the book, but we understand what the book is and what it's for. So for me, you know, I try and tackle it from the art first, and then the construction, the embanding and all the rest of the fiddly bits that go with it, to produce a holistic experience. Because again, it doesn't matter how creative you are, if the book falls apart in your hand, well then it's not a book then, is it? But after saying that, there are some book artists that do purposefully make books that are meant to fall apart. So, but you've got to know how to make the book first. You've got to understand the rules and be at least competent in the rules of the book before you can start breaking those rules. And that's why I think a lot of people, especially with education, they want to get it done now. I want to do this now. And they don't understand you have to go through quite a lot of training to be able to say, actually, I know how that works, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. Not based on it's something nice to do, but based on experience and knowledge, and also an understanding of where you are, where you want to be, and where you will be. So there's so many different things happening.
It's interesting that you spoke about book being a universal concept, and the book as an object appeared some 2,000 years ago or something.
Arguably a lot longer than that.
Yeah, maybe even earlier. But still, it appeared in several regions of our planet, and pretty soon it became this object that is very recognizable, where there are pages. The pages may be of different materials or different folded in different ways, but still, when you see the book from another tradition, you understand that's a book, and
you understand the concept, you understand it, and it becomes a very accessible medium. I mean, there are very few ways of working which have lasted 2,000 years. I can think of a handful: ceramics, metalwork, but the book, it's, you know, and it's it's also constantly evolving as well. Different ways, not necessarily in the construction, though that does evolve, of course, but in the way we work with it and the way we understand it. It is constantly evolving, because obviously we have new illustrators, new writers, new materials we can use and experiment with, and new ways of actually engaging with the book as well. So for me, it's just a continuum. We all stand on the shoulders of those before us.
Could you expand a bit on breaking the rules when you know them just fine? One example of your work does come to mind immediately. I really like a few of your books that if you could take them, you wouldn't necessarily know which way is up and which way is down.
Yes, it is. I mean, the thing is when you look at when we look at all the different sorts of cultures, both from the past and now, and hopefully in the future, there are simple things like different cultures open the book in a different way. Then there are different forms of writing, or pictograms, or ideograms, or whatever. If you look at quite a lot of Southeast Asian sort of writing, whatever, it's done vertically, and the reason for that is because originally the surface to write on was strips of bamboo. So of course you write vertically because that's where you're going to get all the text on, and it's easier to look at in the vertical than it is in the horizontal. And if you go to Southeast Asia and you go to a graveyard, as you might do, you'll see these strips of bamboo, marking graves and things. So it's still carried on, but also it's breaking the rules, and it's also manipulating the rules. So it's, for example, in many cultures, and hopefully I'll be able to show you this later on. Many cultures, destroying the book you don't do. It's because it is, the written word, and especially within the religious context, which a lot of the earlier books were about, the religious context. And, you can't destroy the word of your God or your Messiah or whatever. But if you bury the book, you're not destroying it. You're just burying it. Nature destroys it. So what I do is I bury books, and then I let nature take full circle and come up with these amazing, beautiful sort of book objet, which, it's amazing. Nature is the most perfect of all artists. And that's basically breaking a rule, sort of, but it's also manipulating the rule. And it's like sometimes I burn books. I hasten to add very, very quickly at this point, I make the books that I bury, and I make the books that I burn. It's not somebody else's work. It's my work. Before we go any further, before I get loads of postcards going, "You swine," but it's I write in a book, I burn the book, I mix the ashes and what's left with gum arabic, a little bit of wine, and I use that to print with. And so I can make the complete works of my sketchbook into just a word book, and from the ashes. So it's about condensing everything as well. So there are many different facets to what you can do when you understand the rules. It means you can break the rules. But if you're breaking rules without understanding what you're doing, you're not really doing anything. You're just doing stuff for the sake of doing it, without having that underpinning, that foundation of what is the book to start with, and then extrapolating or abstracting from that to produce something which is a statement, or is a comment, or is a new way of working and seeing the book.
Your comments on burying and burning the books reminded me of my experience in bookbinding and teaching bookbinding, because over the years I found out that many laymen, many people who don't know about book arts or bookbinding have, I wouldn't say more respect to books, but more piety to books or something. So I had some book repair courses, and I brought some cheap books to the courses, and I put them into buckets of water to show how to work with soaked books, or destroy them in some ways, cut them, turn them. and some of my students were just appalled by this process. Like, how can you teach people if you don't have an object you need to repair or something?
Exactly, I understand exactly. One of the things I do with particularly restoration and conservation students who seem to be the tightest about this, like this, is I get a paperback and I say, well, you know, there's about 10 to 15% moisture in the paper, and they go, ooh, there's no water. I say, yeah, there is. I'll show you how you can take a book apart very quickly. So what I do is I get the paperback and I put it in my microwave, and then whack it on, bring it out a few minutes later, and it's steaming and the adhesive has melted. And I say, that's how you can take a book apart incorrectly, but it's taken apart. And of course, they see the steam and they can see the physical action of what happens in different environments and different climates. And so, yeah, one sometimes has to break the egg to make the omelette. Definitely, yeah. It's their faces when you do it. This is, oh.
Yeah.
If anybody is going to be doing that at home, please follow all safety lines. And of course, do take out any metal strips.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they put these strips in the shops that prevent security strips. Yeah, it can ruin everything. Well, it will be spectacular.
It was very spectacular. Just the once, it was very spectacular.